Good morning again. It's an honor to be here sharing with you. This is sacred time. And I think it's obvious the readings today are exuding mercy and forgiveness. We have that poignant reading from the Old Testament of Joseph, who was betrayed by his family, his brothers, and sold into slavery. And yet, when they come to him, unknowing that it's him, he forgives them. And we won't even get into that today, but it's an amazing foundational story of forgiveness. And we have Matthew's gospel, obviously, where Peter asks Jesus that question, how many times do I have to forgive a member of the community when they've done me wrong? And you have to love Peter here. He's so human. He reminds us of ourselves when we're in that moment, knowing what we're supposed to do, what we should do, and yet struggling with it. You could tell he's thinking of someone. I'm imagining thinking of someone specific. How many times do I have to forgive him? 7. He's trying to be generous and live into Jesus' call. 7 times. Jesus says what? 77 times, right? And then he tells that story. And Peter, I wish I could see, the look on his face when Jesus responds 77 times. And then we have that conflicted story of the king that Jesus tells to underline the seriousness of mercy, right? That image conflicting forgiveness with a tortured heart. And the king eventually torturing the one he had mercy for. And Jesus' message of what happens when we can't forgive? Because that's our calling over and over and over again. What happens is hearts are tortured. If we're unable to forgive ourselves, to forgive others, or to allow ourselves to receive forgiveness, receive the unconditional love of God, the unconditional mercy of God, truly, and the forgiveness of others around us. Mercy is crucial, Jesus is saying, to healing and reconciliation. And this is underlined in today's collect, which we prayed. We're not guided by this. We're mandated, as Jesus makes clear. In the collect, we're directed, we're praying, direct us. Rule our hearts, because we know sometimes we can't do that. Rule our hearts to be merciful. So we hear that seriousness that Jesus shows. If you want to be faithful to my understanding of God's love, be merciful. We know how hard it is, especially in these times, in these days. I began to write this sermon on Wednesday morning. You remember that day where the sun could not shine, that ominous red, orange sky, where the sun trying to break through and the ashes falling down, that lightless, troubling, hellish, dystopic sky, people hurting, a symbol of how we're feeling, I think, and the way of the world now. People hurting, people divided, fear and anxiety falling from the sky like ashes, and we're breathing it. We are feeling frail. And yet, in this gospel, this literal good news from 2,000 years ago, this eternal truth is trying to break through the darkness, break through that mercy heals the suffering in this world. Forgiveness begins to heal the pain in people's hearts. And for us to forgive is a strength. It is powerful. We are strong when we're able to do this, because we know it's not easy, and we know we have to judge first before we forgive. Otherwise, we're just playing with mercy. It's empty, right? We must judge the wrong. We name the evil. We proclaim the hurt. Otherwise, it's just empty. It's like akin to racial reconciliation. We must name the truth first. We must pass judgment. Our history is ominous when it comes to racism. It is, as Jim Wallace says in his book, America's Original Sin. Racism has and continues to harm us all individually and corporately. So yes, we are frail. So what to do? We surrender to the truth. And then we find mercy, using the strength that we have within us. We ask forgiveness, and we live into that forgiveness ourselves, repaying the ethical debt with eyes open and hearts fortified again and again and again, even when we're tired of it. 77 times, as long as it takes, we show up with our hearts directed and ruled by God's grace because it's the right thing to do. It's the loving thing to do. It's the compassionate thing to do. It's the just thing to do. So we are both frail and strong. And this is where prayer comes in. Prayer is an acknowledgement of our frailty, our fragility, if you will, and an acknowledgement by God's grace of our strength. Despite human frailty, to be strong and to move towards a real hope. That's what the Christian journey is. Confession, absolution, redemption, new beginnings, resurrection. I'm emboldened by an article by Aja Hales, a blogger, and she writes that she is one of 877 persons of color among 6,000 in her local Presbyterian church region, the Presbytery. And she says to her fellow white Christians in this blog article, quote, "Your guilt isn't helping me in terms of racism." And she wrote this a year ago in August of 2019, quote, "You did not ask to be born into skin that the Western world deems superior, any more than I asked to be born into skin it deems inferior. Yet, we are still living with a shameful and dehumanizing cultural legacy." And she says, this survivor's guilt is debilitating. This survivor's guilt is debilitating. We can't stop there. We can't withdraw. Otherwise, we miss the critical opportunity to develop and to grow resilience, strength, to fight all that keeps us from acting, from changing, and becoming agents of transformation ourselves. As Christians, we're called to move from fragility, which is natural and true, to strength, to resilience. That's the Jesus moment. That's the kicker in the Jesus movement. And that's why we use prayer. Prayer is a reminder again and again and again, 77 times, that we can change, we can transform by God's grace, by our tradition, by the support of the community, by the knowledge of our true selves. This week I picked up a little book in my office called The Wisdom of the Celts. It's just a little book, and I'd like to share some prayers from it and then offer a musical rendition of one of the prayers in here as well. Because it's like the Psalms. Prayers help us move through all our needs, right? The difficulties, and it helps us to be grateful and thankful for the good. So this book, The Wisdom of the Celts by David Adam, I was sharing a prayer with a parishioner on the phone, took a picture of it and sent it to her over the weekend. And I hadn't even noticed the title of this prayer, called The S'moring of the Fire. The S'moring of the Fire, S-M-O-O-R-I-N-G. And she said, "What's that?" And I said, "I have no idea." And so, of course, we immediately Googled it and looked it up. And the s'moring of the fire in ancient Celtic homes was keeping the fire going overnight for the next day. Because back in the day when they used peat, right, bricks of bog dried out, it was very difficult to light that peat. But so they kept it going for days and days, for a year even. And they had this prayer in the evening when they spread ashes over that peat in order to subdue it, but to keep it going. And it reminds us of our own spiritual lives. Sometimes we just have to stop and rest and pray when the ashes are around us. But hold on to that spiritual flame. Hold on to the grace of God, to our belief in redemption and the power to change. So this prayer was offered at the end of the day when the darkness came. The sacred three: to save, to shield, to surround the hearth, the house, the household. This eve, this night, oh, this eve, this night and every night, each single night. Amen. So the Celts strongly believed in the goodness of God, right? Saint Columbanus wrote, "If you want to understand the Creator, seek to understand created things." God was everywhere. God was incarnational. God was with you when you lit the fire. And so they believed in the goodness, but they also believed that we are under enemy occupation, that there's evil out there. And we had to choose between the goodness or that evil. So hence these prayers that lift that up, prayers of protection, prayers of gratitude, prayers of strength. So for example, this doxology from the Western Highlanders: "As it was, as it is, and as it shall be evermore, God of grace, God in Trinity, with the ebb, with the flow, ever it is so. God of grace, God the Trinity, with the ebb and the flow. With all the ups and downs, God is present, supporting us and showing us the way. God is with us and helping us to fight evil and to protect ourselves as we do so." This from Saint Columba: "Alone with none but thee, my God, I journey on my way. What need I fear when thou art near, O King of night and day? More safe I am within thy hand than if a host did round me stand." So I want to end today with a song, with a song of sharing two songs. The one that we sang already, that in the praise song, "Be Thou," you surround us, that gives us peace and strength. And then a second song which captures our call to change, to be transformed, to make a difference. So the first song, "Be Thou," and the second song, which I wrote 30 years ago, I think. I can't believe that. I haven't sung for a long, long time. And Ryan and Sophia will help in singing this. So we offer this as a reflection of the sermon, showing that movement from our awareness of God's presence, our centeredness in praise, and then our call to be transformed and to transform this world, to share the goodness and to change things in the name of Christ's love.